All right, everyone, let's go ahead and get started. Good afternoon or good morning, wherever you are, and thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Claudia, and I'm the content manager here at Proformex. Before we kick things off, I just want to review a couple housekeeping items with everyone. First, you will notice that since this is a Zoom webinar, you're in listen/view only mode, but we do still encourage your participation with our session. So if you have any questions, you can use the Q&A feature to submit those or the chat box. Secondly, I'll be dropping a link to a survey in the chat box to collect your feedback about this roundtable session. We'd really appreciate your input to help us continue making our content better and relevant for you. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our moderator for today's panel, our very own CMO, David Morris.
Thank you very much, Claudia. Can everybody hear me okay? Awesome, great.
Yep.
So if we had to boil down everything we've learned from 2020 so far into just one word, that word just might be adapt. In one way or another, all of our lives look much different now than they did last winter. And we've all had to adapt both personally and professionally to overcome the challenges presented by these big changes. Our panel of experts today represent the full spectrum of perspectives across the life insurance industry, and they'll be sharing their insights around what they've done to adapt and how they'll continue to serve the industry as best they can going forward. There are a lot of unknowns, but what these panelists do know is that they're committed to the life insurance industry and will do all they can to manifest the best possible outcomes for all of us. So before we dive into the questions we have prepared for you all today, I wanted to briefly introduce each of our expert panelists. So first up is Martin Schafer, Vice President, National Accounts at John Hancock Insurance. Martin is responsible for the oversight of all national account relationships, as well as the management of the national account team. Martin's focus is creating productive and effective relationships between their account clients and their producers. Martin, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, David. Good to be here.
Yep. All right. So next we have Sharon Kern, Vice President of Sales at Ensight. For those of you who are familiar with Ensight, Ensight has been in the fintech and insurtech space for over 20 years. As a senior leader at Ensight, Sharon and her sales team work with carrier and distribution partners to transform permanent life and annuity product sales with their sales enablement solution, architected for both virtual and in-person selling, which is very relevant for today's conversation. Today's solution-based sales process requires tools such as Ensight to transform what was historically a product pitch to an engaging storytelling process with vibrant, interactive digital presentations. Sharon, thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you so much as well.
All right. We also have Pat Wedeking, Vice President, Business Development at Tellus Brokerage Connections. Pat is directly responsible for communicating the Tellus value proposition and attracting more BGAs to the fastest growing IMO in the business. Pat, welcome.
Thank you.
All right. And last but certainly not least, we have Proformex founder Mike Pepe, who I get the pleasure to speak with all the time. So, but prior to founding Proformex, Mike started in the life insurance business with Mass Mutual and quickly became a leading agent. Soon after, he co-founded River Financial Group, which was a full-service financial advisory firm focusing on building a highly successful financial planning practice. As Mike focused on helping others mitigate the facets of life insurance, he turned to technology and developed a software system to make policy management and monitoring more systematic and useful. And capitalizing on his nearly 20 years of experience, Mike launched Proformex, which is the leading in-force policy management platform that helps fiduciaries, financial planners, insurance brokerages, and agents monitor, manage, and govern their life insurance policy. So Mike, as always, for about the sixth time today, welcome.
Thank you, David.
All right, and I'm David Morris, Chief Marketing Officer of Proformex. So let's get going here. All right, so Sharon, we're gonna start the first topic with you. How have life insurance prospecting, sales, and policy servicing changed in the last 4 months for you?
Well, isn't that the number one question we all ask, right? It's changed dramatically. I mean, probably more rapidly than we could have imagined, right? So, you know, when we talk with our customers and we work throughout every part of the vertical, the biggest challenge today, since the start of COVID, is just how do we build a customer relationship in a virtual environment? So, you know, for us, we thought about it, and really just as early as January 2020, pre-COVID, 90% of the life insurance agent sales conversations and 70% of customer interactions, obviously, they were all done in person, and that is no more. So really, fast forward 4 months later, these same conversations, 90% or better, are done virtually and online. So what this means, and we've had to really dig through it and figure out how we can support the process, is that moving through a digital transformation, and what does that mean? It's accelerated by as much as 89%. So what's happened is, whether it's a producer, an agent, an agency, an IMO, an FMO, a carrier, the transformation and the investment in data and digital tools has gone from 30 miles an hour to like 150 miles an hour, just to accommodate this new virtual selling environment, which we're all living in.
Gotcha. So when you say that, so what does that exactly mean? Like, how would you define the digital transformation in the COVID environment specifically?
Yeah, so I mean, for us, there's probably 4 core components to a digital transformation, and I'll talk about 4 of them briefly so I don't overtake the time. But one is to simplify and automate the customer and agent experience. So really, this is defined as leveraging a sales enablement platform or software that takes the sale from a static printed piece of paper to a dynamic interactive presentation. And this allows an agent, a producer, a wholesaler to present really live, up-to-date information in a variety of highly graphic, visual pleasing ways. So think about it this way, instead of using a PowerPoint or talking from bullet points or holding up a flat piece of printed paper, a dynamic sales presentation can deliver stunning interactive graphics that will actually, in a digital online meeting, keep the participants' attention. And that's really key, because you're no longer in person anymore. So you have to engage in a different way. So I would say that's number 1. Number 2 is leveraging cloud-based solutions that deliver aggregated data analytics. And what does this mean? We're all decentralized, and this can typically be a subcomponent of a sales enablement software. And it provides metrics of sales performance, so reporting, views of what's being presented during the sales process and or sold in the virtual sales environment. And that's super important for the business as a whole, right? Because we're all selling virtually. And the third area for, I think, digital transformation is you have to deploy dependable communication platforms. So that's just the base layer. So these would be tools such as audio and video solutions like Zoom, GoToMeeting, WebEx, VoIP, voice over IP, so you can interact and make your calls directly from your computer and have no friction. And then I would say probably the 4th and final is integrating e-signatures to eliminate paper. So these would be application-based solutions such as drop ticket platforms, including new permanent insurance drop ticket solutions, as well as e-signatures such as DocuSign and the like. So the whole idea of creating that trusting relationship meeting online is really eliminating the friction in our on-demand world and helping you to build those relationships in a organic, natural way. So that's probably what I would say.
Yeah, it makes total sense. Pat, do you have anything you wanted to add on that, or anybody else on the panel? How you've seen? I don't mean to throw you under the bus, Mike. You might have a better answer as well.
No, I thought Sharon said it well, and these platforms are available. She talks about a digital transformation, and we're there. That is not something of the future or something that we should all aspire to. It's here, right? And there's a lot of digital platforms that are available out there. A lot of them very, very good, and so we've just encouraged our producers to use those, and they've done so with a lot of success.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, I would just add, obviously, it is changing digitally. You're utilizing different tools to interact with the client, but at the end of the day, insurance is sold based on relationships, and utilizing the tools to interact with the client and to keep those relationships or build them is very powerful when you combine all these tool sets out there.
Yeah, the only other thing I would say, just as a closing comment, and I meant to mention this, is that always be online face-to-face. It's very rare that I have a phone call anymore. It almost feels awkward because I don't think we're going to go backwards. I think this will continue, and these types of meetings will continue to become more meaningful as people adjust.
I agree with you on that. I find that if I'm on a Zoom call or whatever it is, and somebody's not face to face, I always like, what's wrong? Like, what's going on? What are they hiding? But if I was on the receiving end and someone was trying to sell me or service me and they weren't engaging with me virtually face to face, I would sort of question that. So that's a great point.
Yeah.
All right. So let's move on to another question. Just throw this one out to Pat. What are some ways your respective, Tellus specifically, you're helping agents make new sales calls while they can't meet face to face?
Well, what we've done primarily is taken a stance that we need to communicate with the producers. And so we've tried to develop tools for our agencies to help them communicate and just be present. And then we've also done, part of that is putting out news like carrier information and digital solutions that are available to them, and just kind of an all is well feeling that we've tried to notify people about. We've also told them, the truth in that we've shared our sales volume, which hasn't gone down. And so I think the effect of that is to say, hey, people are still right in life insurance business, and no reason to crawl in a hole or get out of the business because others are doing it, and you can too. So that's been successful. We've also listened. Part of half of communication is listening, and what we have found is that the producers that are producing took this same type of approach with their customers, and that is that they just made sure they were present. In times of uncertainty, if you can just get on the phone and call them and make sure that that they know you're here and available, sales happen from that. And so we've really focused on tools that would help them to work with their existing clientele in the same spirit, just communicate and help work with existing customers. So we've done things like policy review. And I saw one statistic where they said most life insurance is sold during a policy review. And that made sense to me because so many things change, right? And policies change and people's lives change and that sort of thing. So we've tried to develop tools to help people work with their existing customers. Some of the tools are client-facing approach, scripts and letters. We've been tools on term conversions, heavy focus on term conversions. The cost of waiting has been a real popular piece that we put together. And then fact finders and whole toolkits so that they know what's available, where to go, what to do, just kind of quick reference guides. So it's all been about communication, both putting the word out that everything is fine, sales have remained intact, and then tool sets that they can use, and then doing a fair amount of listening.
Got it. So Martin, I'm going to ask you, how are you guys? What are you guys doing to support your folks that you work with right now? You're seeing.
So, well, I mean, in market, it's funny listening to Pat talk about policy reviews. I just did a Hancock Talks podcast on policy review, and it seemed almost like I was going back in time, but it's so true what he mentioned, that the policy review is such a cornerstone of how we grow business. What we're doing to help support our distributing relationships is really meet them where they're at. We've noticed that winning organizations have adapted and have had to adapt to the new environment, the new normal, and those that have in many instances seen growth in sales. And so I think you have elements of retreat in the marketplace and elements of growth in the marketplace, and a lot of that is folks who have figured out a way, everyone to adapt to what the opportunities are that lie within it.
Yeah. I mean, do you find that like in times like these, like during COVID or like in 2008 with the housing crisis, like big events that have disrupted that, and maybe not just you'd answer this, Martin, but the team as well, that these events enhance people's need or want to know what's going on with their policies or need more insurance? It is a trigger?
Well, when I think when you think about people, I mean, COVID particularly, probably much more so than the financial crisis of 2008, has definitely increased people's awareness of their mortality.
Yeah.
I think LIMRA has shared statistics of the increased Google searches on life insurance has almost tripled, if memory serves, over the last several months, and it's clearly created an awareness of what we do, both socially and as an organization with our producers and business partners. But I think that sort of shock to the marketplace always creates opportunity. I think that's what you're seeing happen now.
Yeah.
I would add that now is a perfect time for prospecting as well, because people are concerned about their personal well-being, and if you're going to reach out to someone, now's a good time to do it, because if that agent's not following up and doing the reviews, that's a perfect opportunity to build that trust and identify issues, opportunities, concerns, and ultimately write new business.
Yeah. What do we always say? Like, if you're not servicing your customer, someone else is, or someone else will. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that awareness that of the people's own mortality is very real. Just anecdotally, I still have an insurance license, and friends and family call me every now and again, and I've had 3 people reach out to me asking for life insurance in the last 6 months, which is about 3 more than have ever reached out to me. Right? So yeah, it's real.
Nice. Sharon, anything you want to add on that?
Nope, I'm good on that one.
All right, perfect. So Martin, I'm going to tee you up on this one here. What do you, and this is an interesting question because it kind of segues from what we just talked about. What do you think the long-term ramifications of the last 4+ months since really COVID started are on how we do business?
Sure. Sharon mentioned at the beginning, I don't think we'll ever go back. I think of today's call as a microcosm of what we've experienced in the last 5 months. If you'd have told me in January that in August I'd be doing all of my meetings electronically over a video chat,
right,
I'd have called it crazy. I mean, it was creepy almost at that time, right? I mean, if people asked you to do that, it was just totally abnormal, and now it's normal. And I think it has fundamentally challenged for our industry how we want to operate on a go-forward basis. I've talked to numerous BGAs and distributors, and I'll use myself as an example. I traveled 42 weeks last year. I don't think we'll ever go back to that type of a reality. Probably land somewhere in the middle, but I think much of how we operate as an industry, will forever change. And I'm not just talking about technology, I'm talking about the entire interface. Mike mentioned a lot about how the life insurance sale particularly is made, and I do think there will always be that element, but I think that a lot of what we do on a day-to-day basis will never be the same. I really look at it in 3 lenses. Number one is, the technology. 2 is, people's evaluation of their personal health. And then thirdly, what hasn't changed actually, and to kind of throw a curveball at you. The technology, and I'll talk about technology from 3 lenses. From a carrier perspective, at John Hancock, we've been heavily investing in technology for a long time. We feel like we're very well positioned with our EAP capabilities, our access to human API, Pareto, et cetera. But all of that stuff ramped up radically when we found ourselves trying to navigate DocuSign agreements and just how we operate on a daily basis with our distribution partners. So from a carrier perspective, and we're not alone there, things have radically accelerated. From a distributor, to my point earlier about adaptation, I think distributors have had to determine, how and where they want to play with their business model as a result of what's happened. What platforms did they have access to? Did they want to have access to? What carriers were they able to integrate those things with? And then I think consumers have had to figure out, how do I, based upon my point I'll talk about in a second with their personal health awareness, how do I go out and access and gather and buy life insurance in this environment? So I think all of that has created an accelerant in the industry, and I don't think that'll ever turn back. I think that's permanent. The second piece I wanted to talk about in terms of people's evaluation of their personal health. I mean, we believe at Hancock, and that is something that we have a shared value proposition with consumers. And so something like COVID-19 that brought everyone's individual mortality and personal health to the forefront, we think is directly aligned with our Vitality partnership and how we have products that have features and benefits that directly connect to how people live their lives, and through Vitality reward people for taking small incremental measures on a daily basis to live healthier, and as a result have premium savings and ultimately better policy performance potentially. One exact and specific example of that is our Aspire platform, which is specifically made for folks who are living with diabetes, people who have controlled diabetes who contract COVID-19 have a 1% mortality rate. For those who contract COVID-19 without controlled levels, have an 11% mortality rate. So that is a direct reflection of how we literally built products that help people live a longer and healthier life. So that whole personal health and awareness is not only happening now, but I think that will continue. And we think it'll accelerate our Vitality platform and Aspire platforms. And then thirdly, I think it's important to talk about what has not changed. There is an overwhelming need for life insurance for consumers in the US that's not been fulfilled, that this has shined a light on. And the value of life insurance is more prevalent now than ever, and more important now than ever as we look to protect Americans. And I think it can't be lost that that's not going to happen without the guidance of agents and advisors. And so I think we've made huge strides forward with technology and with awareness of health. But the marketplace and the industry is still very reliant on the, as Mike mentioned earlier, that connection with an advisor who's going to help with the nuances of making these very significant decisions for folks' financial future.
Interesting. Yeah, it's a game changer. I think you're right. It's like, what is going to stay the same is probably is a really powerful question to that. So without having a crystal ball and obviously not having a contingency plan, I don't know if you want to answer this one or somebody else. How do we see 2021 playing out at this point as far as revenues? Like, do you think that the need, the interest or highlight the interest in insurance will continue to be there? Will it level out? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'll jump in. I mean, first of all, I'm just trying to get through next week.
Right. So that's fair.
It's a long ways away. We've had, I'll just speak for us. We've had a very great, strong year. We just released our second quarter earnings. They're out there. And so you can see that the U.S. life business has done well. Obviously, there's been an impact, but I think it's I don't want to prognosticate on our future sales, but, I do feel that, the need to continue to adapt at the distributor level, at the carrier level, and at the end consumer level will continue. And I think all of the enhancements, I believe all of the enhancements we've made thus far and will continue to make to help engage clients and consumers where we can meet them, will continue to grow, sales in market. I think, our industry is typically, as you all know on this call and probably listening, typically been a flat industry, unfortunately. So do I think we'll get to a place in a COVID environment where we're seeing double-digit growth? Likely not, but I think we will find a way to continue to meet the needs of consumers, and I think we'll continue, successful winning producers, agents, and distributors and carriers, frankly, will find a way to meet the consumers where they're at. What that ultimately looks like, David, it's hard to say what 2021 looks like. We don't even know if we're traveling in 2021. I think that's where a slow approach to this is probably the most, and cautious approach to this is probably the most appropriate.
Yep.
Yeah, for us, I think the uncertainty is really, opened up the opportunity to partner up with other pieces in the industry. How can we better serve our clients and ultimately the policyholders? So for us, building relationships, with everyone that's on the panel here is important to us. And I think that's going to be a positive thing for not only the producers, but the policyholders, because now, it's a focus. It's, you're not going 100 miles a day on your own stuff. You're thinking about strategies and partnerships, and collectively, I think we could bring a lot of good to the industry.
Yeah, and I think there's also another part to it too. the importance of selling the products and what will happen is certainly on everybody's mind, but also the importance of bringing more people into the industry is vital to keep it alive and growing and recovering from where it's been. So, how do you recruit producers? How do you make them want to come into the business, and a business which has typically been led by an older generation of salespeople? And so we have to think about that too. And so from my side, I'm always thinking about, it is digital. Think about it right now. You were on a plane 42 weeks a year. I wasn't too far behind you. And now my day is 9, 10 Zoom meetings. But even though it's laborious at times, what it's done for us, it's opened up opportunities to expand the sales outside of your general network. So these producers have to be enabled to say, here's what you do to get to somebody in DC. It's now open reign. And how do we attract new producers to want to participate? So that's super important as well.
On that, oh, go ahead, Pat. You're going to jump in there.
Well, I was just going to say I'm optimistic as well. Not only do I think that being aware of one's mortality is here to stay, but managing uncertainty, that's what we do for a living, right? That's a business we're in. And then I also like I always, I'm an agent at heart, and I think where the rubber meets the road is making contact with people and getting up to bats. And so much of our business has always been looking at ratios and everything. But I play golf with a guy who sells like leaf filters for the houses, and I said, well, how's your business? He said, it's double what it was last year. And I said, why? People want leaf filters? And he said, no, we just talk to more people because they're home. And not only are they home, but both decision makers are there. So I know that's been the same in my business. I call on DGAs, and I get a hold of more of them. And I don't know that my batting percentage is any higher, but I just get more up to bats. So I think there's parts of this that bode well for our industry's future.
Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense. We see across the board, right? It's different. Some of it's better. Some of it's a little frustrating. We've all been on the road a lot prior to all of this, and now, like you said, I think it's a great analogy. The leaf filter guy. People are just at home, or they're in their office. They're not going anywhere, and you have the ability to have, just, for lack of a better term, more at bats, right? Just simply more at bats. And so if you just bat the same, you're in good shape. All right. So speaking about what we used to do and being optimistic, one of the big things I know all of us have done in the past years is attending events, right? Conferences, shows, all that stuff. A lot of them have gone virtual this year. But what are you guys specifically? I'm sure anybody who wants to take the first one. What are you doing to fill that void? Sharon, you're in tech, so you're one of on our side on that. What are you doing to fill that from an Ensight position?
We're certainly talking about it because we're getting a lot of invitations to virtual meetings. And the question becomes, how do you look at these conferences or these virtual conferences going forward? If you try to measure ROI in a digital virtual conference, it's probably going to be very difficult. So, what are your strategies? Why do you want to go?
Right.
Is it an exposure? Is it a relationship? How much can you actually affect? And really, how long should the virtual conference be? We've heard, as an example, NAILBA, we hear that they're going to spread it over months. I'm not sure you can keep people engaged over months. So is a virtual conference better in a sprint, or in sections and different participations once a month? All TBD as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. And well, when you figure it out, will you let me know? Because allegedly I'm responsible for that at our company. So I'm just trying to figure that out as well.
Yeah, it's really hard.
Yeah. Pat, what do you, on your side? Because I know you guys attend a bunch of things.
Let's see. Main purpose of our get together, our conferences are partners talking together and interchanges with carriers. So as far as talking together, we've created something we call Tellus study groups. So we're putting together organized study groups so they can have an opportunity to share information with each other, which they love, by the way. And then we've got this thing called Tuesdays with Tellus, where we bring on a carrier representative, and we've sort of ramped that up. So those are the things we've done.
That's great. Yeah, we met at one of your, was it Lidma last year where we met?
Yes.
Yeah. That's right. Same thing.
Yep. And Lidma's foregoing a virtual conference and adding, I think, 4 or 6 really focused webinars that have been well received.
That's great. How about you, Mark?
Yeah, so I really look at it, like Pat talked about with our clients. We're meeting a lot of them where they want to meet us, and we're trying to participate in as many of their events as we possibly can. The Crump Leadership Symposium we just had is an example of that.
Yep.
So trying to do it that. So externally, we're trying to meet our clients where they're at. Internally, we're trying to navigate having an entire sales force of our own and keeping them engaged with both ourselves, our organization, and our clients, and trying to navigate what we do internally to train and work with our organization. And then lastly, the events that we had on docket, and we're trying to navigate, using whether it be Zoom, On24, Skype, WebEx, just what are the different platforms that we can engage and do virtual sponsorships and virtual events that try and help at least engage folks in a manner that's, it's never the same as being face-to-face, but as effective as possible.
Yep. Mike, you want to take the Proformex side?
Yeah, roundtables, obviously, webinars, customer-driven interactions, so really focusing back on our clients, what's working, what do they need help on, how can we make the products better, and really, take the time to understand and listen to that. Since we have some free time, we're just taking our people that may be on the road and interacting more with clients. And then for, our prospects out there that freed up their marketing dollars, it's a good opportunity to give them a call because we know the money's in their budget. So, there's different ways to market and, how can we help them drive sales utilizing our platform? So, we took a little different spin on that. So.
Yeah, and I would say even pre-COVID, we had, and it still continued, we had, small groups and advisory boards, and we want to solicit user feedback. We want to solicit what's happening in the marketplace because that's where we can kind of ideate and get to the next level. So those have continued. And then from the distribution side, we do have webinars, but they're not long. It's sprints. We do things in sprints. It's kind of hard to keep people's attention for any length of time on a Zoom meeting. I think that the max is an hour. We've had some clients, our carrier partners, where we've had to have 90-minute, 2-hour meetings, and it's quite exhausting. I mean, it's just hard to do.
Yeah, they're a lot to prep for on top of actually doing them.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. I think, what I'm hearing, and it really goes back to whether it's pre-COVID or COVID now. At the end of the day, we all have to figure out a way, how do we meet our customer, right? Where do we meet? So although it was different back in the day, like whether it was events or it was less Zoom or online related, it's how do we just meet them where they are? It's kind of as simple as that, and just keep figuring that out. It'll be interesting as these events go virtual to see what happens with them, like what the level of engagement is, because I've always found with these events, the information is interesting, right? A lot of it's very compelling, but it's also the relationships outside of those specific meetings. It's somebody you introduced me to somebody. It's like, oh, let's go grab a cup of coffee, and we speak to how can we help each other specifically on a granular level. So I know, like heading up our side from an event standpoint, a marketing side, we're excited to get back to it. I think there'll be an element to the virtual aspect, right, that will always continue, but there's definitely that missing of being face to face with people when it's safe, going towards that. All right, so I have one more question for you guys, I think, and so this will be an interesting one because it may or may not have anything to do with insurance, but it'd be great if it does. Is there any technology or automation specifically that you've started using that you haven't used in prior to COVID that is really just crushing it for you today and helping you?
I'll take a crack at it here. To relate it to insurance, I think there's several, right? But I think I'd point out electronic policy delivery. For a long time, we've said that's the kind of the biggest win. You can take what's been a 60, 80-day process and turn it into 6 or 8 hour process. And so that's accelerated for us. I think we were somewhere around, depends how you measure it, but we were somewhere around 30, 40% e-delivery. Now it's twice that. And a unintended positive consequence has been that we deliver more policies and shorten the cycle time. So e-delivery would be one I'd point to.
Nice.
I'll go next. I'm going to add this in addition to Instacart. I'll give an insurance example because Instacart has changed our lives, having groceries delivered. I think the adoption of the human APIs and the ability to gather information and ultimately eliminate having to poke people and go get fluids and do fluidless underwriting. I think that will have a transformative effect once I think we're at a point where we're starting to really get some adoption. I think that's just going to continue to mushroom, and I think that will have a radical effect on the underwriting process and how we process business and engage clients as that becomes more and more common. I think much of what has transpired and transformed in underwriting, I think that will be one of those 5 years from now that we look at and go, man, that was a big game changer.
Interesting. How about you, Sharon?
I think for us, it's just the realization that digitization is here to stay. It's not going to go anywhere. So that certainly helps our business in many, many ways. For me personally, engaging, it's just the simple baseline of having dependable tools that allow me to do my job and be effective. If I can make a joke, and I think everybody will relate to this, I was on the road my whole life, right? So my whole career. And at one point, just being in this environment and working virtually, I had to say to myself, I'm a better chair. And we joked between, they're like, hey, you could grab the chair at the office. What's wrong with the $99 chair? I said, well, I've never sat in a chair for 12 hours before. So it's really been an adjustment to make sure that your environment is set up in a manner that is comfortable and that you can give really your personality and who you are and develop that trust. So everything behind me supports that. But we've been very lucky because for our business, it's just going crazy because it's what we do is digital. So
Yep.
that's my little plug.
That's awesome. How about you, Mike?
That's a good point.
Yeah,
I need a new chair.
Yeah.
That, Pat.
For me, along those lines, sitting in the same place for 10 hours in a day, my Apple Watch is great. It reminds me to breathe, to get up, to move around. so I definitely, I'm dependent on this thing. And when it beeps at me, I listen and I get up and get away from the for a minute.
That's great.
That's
I didn't know that. All the times we talked, Mike, I didn't realize that was a big thing. All right. We have a couple questions here. I'm going to see if we've covered most of this here. All right, here's one. I know we have like 2 minutes left. I'm going to throw this one at you because I think this doesn't have really anything to do with technology, but it's actually a really good, I think, with the experience we have here on the panel. How in your history, what have you found to be the best way to build trust with a client or partner? Sharon, you want to take that one first?
Yeah, for sure. I love that question. Don't sell a product, create a solution. So it's not about, giving them the latest widget, selling them the product, and it's not about being a salesperson. It's really about creating a solution that solves their problems and works for them. And if you come at it from that angle, you will appear more authentic. If you use your character, your personality, and your integrity in that process, you will win every single time. That's
great advice. How about you, Pat?
That is good advice. I think it's figuratively and genuinely stepping beside the client, right? Just being sure you're like a trusted advisor as opposed to a salesperson. And sometimes that means recommending they stay put with what they've got and not making a sale and building credibility that way. And so I think it's just genuinely being in an advisory role as opposed to sales.
That's great. Martin?
Can you repeat that? You blanked out on me. Sorry.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I have a habit of blanking out a lot these days. Yeah, the question was how do you be the best way to build trust with a client a partner or your team, just your best way to build trust or instill trust?
Well, it's, I think internally and externally, it's generally about deposits and withdrawals, right? I mean, any good relationship is founded in a balance back and forth of both. And generally to create trust, you have to make more deposits than withdrawals. And so I, typically professionally and personally try and keep that at the front of my mind as I try and look at what my expectations are of a relationship, of a business and personal relationship, and how am I behaving based upon what I just said in relation to what my expectations are. So I think it's always good to keep that in the back of your head.
Great. Mike?
For us, it's being dependable and repeatable and, doing what we say we're going to do and, being a partner. We're not there for the one-time sale. We're there for the long-time relationship and, build the trust over time. It becomes sticky and you build great relationships out of that.
All right. That's great. Well, we're coming up on it here. Before I forget to everybody out there, there's a survey link in the Zoom webinar chat box. Your feedback is incredibly important to us. And if you wouldn't mind taking a minute or two, I believe it's literally 1 or 2 questions. I'd like to thank our distinguished panelists today for joining us, Martin, Sharon, Pat, Mike, everybody for sharing their expertise and insights. Thank you to everybody for tuning in. This webinar is being recorded and we will have it available for consumption in the next day or so. So if there's any questions that you had and we didn't get to, you can definitely reach out to us at Proformex, www.proformex.com, and we will get those questions answered for you ASAP. Thanks again for tuning in today and take care, everybody. Be safe.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Thanks.
Take care, everybody.